Okay, year 13, welcome back. Taking a different tack this week. We are planning to do video screenshots here rather than PowerPoint. Okay, I apologize. I know my PowerPoints in some classes were fine and came through okay, but for some reason in others they didn't. So we'll try this as a different method. Okay, the advantage is I'm able to put things up for you. So we'll start with the whole gas exchange in mammals. This is where we're picking it up from in your notes, page 8. Okay, we have done the plant side of things last week, and since you didn't get to hear my explanation of pretty much, I think, anything prior to that, I'll maybe do a quick video like this to give you a little bit of an overview of that, and we'll post that up in due course. But this is where we're starting, okay? It's the last of this little section on the breathing system of mammals. So we have a mass flow air. It's not diffusion, okay, that gets gases in and out of your lungs, okay. It's a bigger quantity, bigger bulk, and so you're going to have some pressure involved here, okay. So it's all to do with the ventilation and creating a difference in pressure. High to low is still the way it goes, though. That still follows a gradient, but being able to achieve a pressure differential is the big key here with your lungs. Okay, so we've still got Fick's law to explain the properties, okay, when it comes to the alveoli. All right, and these are some of the facts about it now. I'm going to post this particular document, the teacher guide, up for you so you can see it in your own time. The PowerPoint, though, let's just go through some of this, I suppose, to understand it. You've got your human respiratory system, okay, which you learnt way back in probably year 9 and did a little bit from memory at GCSE, okay. So there's not a huge amount of difference, just a few little facts. Your larynx, which is really your voice box, okay. Trachea. Remember, that is your windpipe and it has rings of cartilage, and we'll look at those in more detail in a moment. Then you've got your left lung looking out. You've got your ribs, okay, down the bottom, your sheet, a dome of muscle that separates your thorax, your chest, from your abdomen down beneath. Of course, you'd have your food pipe running down here past the heart, and it would go down through the diaphragm, leading to the stomach and the liver and everything else down beneath. So that's basically your boundary. Now, that's hugely important to keep this pressure difference. Okay, you need to have a sealed container there, so your thorax has to be separate from the rest of your body. Intercostal muscles, okay, that allow your ribs to move, and we'll get into those. Sections of your rib, right bronchus, both are bronchi, remember, with an I, and then your bronchioles. So tracheas to bronchi to bronchioles to alveoli, and we'll get into alveoli now. Here's an x-ray through. Okay, if any of you want to go on to do medicine any kind, you might be looking at this. Of course, with COVID, this is a big one where you're taking x-rays of people's chest to see how much lung capacity they have. Things you're looking for, the hard bone structures, ribs running across there. And then the soft tissue is usually in black. And here you have a bit of a misshapen lung, but that's because you'll have a heart that is positioned just slightly to the left side there. So your left lung is a little bit smaller than your right lung. Okay, there's your diaphragm underneath. The trachea then, okay, this kind of branched upside down Y-shaped structure. It's got, you can see about length 10 centimeters, C-shaped ring cartilage, not the whole way around. Okay, but that stops it from collapsing. So it's the same stuff at the end of your nose and your ears that can bend and are flexible but do keep their shape. And that allows you to twist and bend your neck without too much bother. So you've got the left and right bronchi that feed to each of the lungs after that. So this is your main pipe letting air down into your chest. Put these up and you can put that back a little bit and you can read that. Okay, pause that if you want. But that's the structure. Again, here is a cross section of the trachea. You'll notice that there's just here, okay, the start of this orangey, and it swings all the way around and finishes about there. So that's your C-shaped cartilage, and this would be the front. Okay, your neck, this would be the back, and the reason why it doesn't go the whole way around is, of course, is just behind here you'd have your spinal cord, okay, your vertebrate, your backbone. And so there will be bone protecting this side where there is no cartilage, and this is just the sides and the front that's protected. When you look then at it, you'll notice then you've got different layers. Okay, so that these weird looking shapes, right? Cartilage cells that are producing this flexible, strong material. Then you've got the inside, and there's your ciliated epithelium. Okay, so that's your brush border that your wind is coming, the air is coming down, the skin kind of cleaned. There'll also be goblet cells producing mucus, and this is it magnified, and there you go. Remember we had goblet cells in the ileum we did just before Christmas, and there's your ciliated epithelial cells wafting things down. Okay, gas exchange then. So our surface, like before, it's the alveoli. These sacs at the very end of all these pipes is where the gases will exchange. You'll drop off your oxygen and pick up carbon dioxide to breathe back out again. These fancy little words, no more really in GCSE. Alveolar ducts are just little pipes leading to it. Respiratory bronchioles. And then there's a familiar picture of a alveolus. Okay, it's basically like a bag with a network of capillaries around it. And this is obviously the site of exchange. Okay, gases will be swapped over at this stage. So you can pause this anytime, see what's there, but gases are exchanged by diffusion. So the actual process of oxygen moving out of your alveoli into your blood is diffusion. Carbon dioxide diffuses back, high to low concentration, but the exchange of air from inside and outside. Okay, so breathing in and out is not just a diffusion, it's a pressure related thing, it's mass flow. So little facts about your alveoli. You have a huge number of them, 350 million, okay, making a huge surface area about the size of a tennis court, you can see there. And then there's a large difference in concentration of metabolites between alveoli and blood capillaries. So that also creates this difference, okay, of concentration. Thinness, of course, very, very thin, and that makes them vulnerable. Right? They have to be thin for gases to get across quick enough to allow you to survive, but the vulnerability is that they can rupture. So something like a car accident or a big bang could lead to internal bleeding whenever the barrier between the blood and the alveolus is broken. Therefore, blood could start to leak in. Some questions here you could try, okay, just in your own time. Were the rings essential? How's air cleaned? Important that they are elastic. And then surfactants, okay, are molecules that reduce the surface tension they're found in moisture, why they need it. The surfactant gets mentioned in your notes on page 9, okay, and I'll come back to that in a minute. All right, we'll take a wee break from this, okay, since that was just the ins and outs of it. The mechanics will come to on page 9, so go back to your notes. And you can see, okay, alveolar bubble shape. So that was just some of the facts that you could take off the PowerPoint. Okay, now that surface area is 95 square meters was the last one, or sorry, 75. The other one was 95. Doesn't really matter. You won't be quizzed on the actual number, but they're very, very large surface area. Okay, that's the key. And then epithelial cells, you can see their thickness. Okay, and therefore short diffusion gradient. So you're using the Fick's law issue. Okay, remember the three things: concentration gradient, you've got thinness, and then distance, concentration difference. Okay. Then there's the surfactant, right? What would happen is it's a bit like a balloon. You know, if you get a new balloon and try and blow it up, sometimes the two sides of it are stuck together so well that you'll never be able to force it apart. So you give it a good pull in order to kind of loosen it up and makes it more flexible. Same would kind of happen in your lungs. Okay, water would you know, if you think about two wet surfaces close together in such small microscopic distances, they would actually almost collapse on themselves like a balloon would do. And then when you breathe in, you wouldn't literally get it open enough to allow gas exchange. And so surfactant is a additive as opposed to the moisture that prevents collapse. Okay, lowers the surface tension really. Right, so as you can, therefore, your lungs do not collapse on themselves and stick almost each side together. Right, so that's an important aspect of the moisture in your lungs. It's also there to help with diffusion of gases to dissolve quicker. Okay, but there's this idea of it not reducing the stickiness. Okay, between the water molecules that would be very close in distance to each other, either side of your alveolus. You've also got a risk vascular system, that's the blood, so that maintains the steep concentration gradient. So blood traveling in from your heart and being carried away. At the same time, you've got air being ventilated, new air in, old air out. Okay, so those are the things of the Fick's law. Now we're into the mechanics then. So this is where I go back to this. and it's all to do with how do we breathe. A wee bit of GCSE mainly. Okay, you've got ribs that have muscles attached to them. I suppose what we'll learn now is that there's not just intercostal muscles, there are two sets, internal and external, and you know the slight difference. Okay, and they're antagonistic, like a lot of set of muscles are. They'll work against each other, okay, in order to do a particular job. The other big set of muscle, of course, is the diaphragm that's hugely important at creating these pressure differences. So internal intercostal muscles, so they're the ones on the inside. Okay, if you imagine your ribs, there's an outer set and an inner set. So these are the ones on the inside. They will help with the contraction. Okay, sorry, their intercostal muscles are antagonistic. Contraction of the external radius. So every time you breathe in, it's your external intercostal muscles that are engaged in there. They're contracting. Your internal ones, which are just found behind it, they're not engaging with that. Okay, they help with lowering the rib cage, bringing back. But as you just sit breathing normally, you don't need your internal ones to do much because gravity basically does it for you. Okay, so when you're breathing normally, just as you are now, I'm sure, rather than doing lots of exercise, then external are engaged. So external will contract and internal will relax for inspiration, inhalation. When you expire, then the external ones that did raise your rib cage, they relax, as you'd expect. Now, the internal don't. You don't need them, as I say. Literally, gravity and the weight of your ribs fall, okay, and therefore they do enough to get the air out of your lungs. Now, the difference, though, is when you do some serious exercise, okay, where you need to empty your lungs so much more. All right, so your inhalation, breathing in, you'll have your external intercostal muscles will be contracting greater, and therefore getting your ribs rising higher and further, therefore creating allowing more air in. Whereas whenever you're breathing out, rather than just being a passive process, you're forcing the air out. So therefore your internal intercostal muscles engage at that point, right, under serious exercise during expiration. All right. So this is just somebody breathing in and out. So as the rib cage goes up, that's the externals contracting, and as it drops down, normal conditions, its internals aren't engaged. They're just relaxed anyway. But as you do exercise, then both sets start to contract. One leading up, and the internal then forcing air out. You can see what happens. You're creating a bigger volume when you breathe in, and then a smaller volume when you breathe out, and that's going to lead to pressure differences. Okay, mechanism of breathing then. We're going to fill some of these things in. I think your notes on page 9 and 10. Don't see this table sitting there. So this is a wee table that you could add to your notes if you want. We'll go back to this and fill it in. Okay, here we have complete using. These are the words here that you want to use. And anyway, the answers are there. So breathing is controlled by humans fill and empty their lungs. It involves alternate increase and decrease of air pressure. Inspiration is the process of breathing air in. So inhalation sometimes. The external intercostal muscles contract and shorten, which causes the rib cage to move up and out. There's your little key stage 3 fact. At the same time, the diaphragm muscles, okay, which is dome shaped, remember it's sitting as a dome, contracts and flattens. So if you actually rest your abdominal muscles, put your hands on your tummy and breathe in, you'll notice your tummy will push out. And that's because your diaphragm above it is pushing down on your abdomen. Okay. These muscular contractions or actions rather increase the volume. So the volume goes up and the air pressure goes down. And when the air pressure goes down inside your chest, then it is now greater outside than inside, so air gets forced in. As a result, air flows in from high to low through your nostrils and down into your alveoli. Expiration then, or exhalation, is largely passive. I say it doesn't require your internal intercostals to do much. So it's the relaxation of external. The energy for expiration comes from the elastic tension in the previous one. So as you breathed in, you stretched everything. Okay, as the ribs went up and out, and you have elastic nature in your chest cavity. Therefore, whenever it's released and relaxed, then it just springs back, as well as a little bit of gravity helping there too. It results in the rib cage moving down and in, and the diaphragm returning to its original dome shape. These movements decrease the volume and increase the air pressure. Okay. During active exercise, though, and this is the important bit, however, a second set of muscles called the internal intercostals, they contract, and that forces your rib cage down and in faster, further, and therefore you expel more air from your lungs, taking away more carbon dioxide and allowing more to get in as well. Okay, so that's it a little bit on page 10. To finish then, there's a little bit on smoking. Okay, again, a wee bit kind of key stage 3 like. You've noticed as reference to textbook. These are the things that you need to know a little bit about. Back to the PowerPoint. You can see, you can take yourself through this in your own time, but those are some of the images, some pretty unpleasant ones there of the impact, okay, of smoking. The four things you need to look a wee bit into: cilia damage, bronchitis, emphysema, and lung cancer. All right, now some are better known than others, but how do they diseases, how they're related to smoking, okay, how the lungs affected. Now, I've got some of the answers here, okay, and you can copy that into your notes on these slides, and say you can go through that really just to finish that. Not going to dwell on it now. What you then have is a little bit of space, okay? Remember to include the component of tobacco and above, okay? So could you maybe make some little notes? You could write something here, okay, on that, wherever there's space. Now, this respirometer is not a big worry. We'll come to that in due course, okay? Now, that takes us through that first section, all right? And I say, because of the PowerPoint issue and you haven't heard, I'll do a little overview of the first part, and then I'll tidy that up. Next week, we're going to get into plant transport, okay, the complexities of it. That's quite a nice little one before we get into animal transport, which is the circulatory system, heart, and all that business, okay, which would be good fun. But anyway, keep in touch with me, folks, please, if there's any issues, okay. Otherwise, we'll keep firing things up and hopefully get it all working pretty smoothly. Bye bye.